5 here at Summerfield Cottage Apartments. I just want to introduce this video that you're about to watch in the class as it begins now. We're going to take a week here and just look at the tabernacle and look at some of the details in it. This clip that you're about to watch is about a 30-minute clip, and really gives you a good eye view, a good perspective of what it may have been like. It's still computerized, so it's not the real thing, but it gives you a really good idea of what it could have been like with all those numbers of Israelites when they left Egypt, and God had given Moses the commandments and all the ceremonies and rituals and the building of the tabernacle, which is where God was going to dwell among His people, the Israelites. And so we want to look at that this week. And why? Why do we want to look at it? Well, it's a very good point to begin at because it is sort of the epicenter of typology, understanding the beginnings of how God revealed Himself to His people through symbolic ways. And I want to begin with that because a lot of what we're going to do in this class segment as we go through the appointed feast, we're going to look at them in their historical context, we're going to look at them in their memorial context, and we're going to look at them in their fulfillment of Jesus Christ when He came the first time. And then we're going to look at the future ones to happen as well. But as we look at them in a historical and memorial context, we want to see them as a type of Christ. Now, what is a type of Christ? I use that word, but what is a type of Christ? It can be used synonymously with prophecy. It's a prophetic overtone, but prophecy is more directly a word spoken that is to come to pass, and a type is more of a picture, a parable, if you will, an illustration of the character of Christ. If you think of the word type and typology, it's just like the old typewriters when you type away, well, the print that was left on your paper was not the actual bit that hit the paper. It was a type. That's where you get the typewriter. It's a type of the stamp itself. And so it's kind of like what the Bible would call a shadow. A shadow. We use this word shadow a little bit differently than prophecy. Like I said before, prophecy is more direct, even though there's sometimes where it's an indirect prophecy where it illustrates, like for example, through the writings of David and how Jesus was really foreseen through a lot of his Psalms. But the type specifically, the biblical wording might be a shadow instead of a type. And that's why you see me here sitting, this. Maybe you remember back in your grade school years or latter years, or maybe you helped the grade school kids once upon a time when you did a little craft, and what it was to get their profile shot against a wall. And you had them stand still. That wasn't always easy. It's not always easy to get a kid to just sit still for a couple moments while you trace their face. You trace the outline of their face, their chin, their mouth, their nose, their eyes, and their head all the way around. And what you got done with that profile shot, usually it would be a black piece of paper, and you trace it out, and then you cut it out, and then you put it on top of another different colored paper, whatever it would be, or even just a white wall like this. And you could put 20 kids across that wall, and you could tell, each one of those kids could probably tell the differences and the individual characteristics and specifics of which kid that was, just from their shadow themselves. And that's sort of the illustration or the words the word picture that's being used when it talks about a foreshadow in Scripture. And in many ways, the Old Testament gave many illustrations or types of Christ, and that's how we're going to look at these feasts as types of Christ. And we want to be really careful anytime that you're looking at a type or a symbol or an illustration, Old Testament or New Testament, that we don't try to squeeze whatever meaning we want out of it, because it's easy for anyone to speculate and think, oh, this could mean this, that, or the other. And there will be times in our session where I might give an idea or a possibility, but we really want to look at what the Bible says maybe a type would be. And the Bible justifies for us just doing that. For example, if you turn to Hebrews, I'll let you guys turn there real quick. Hebrews, will go to chapter 8. Hebrews chapter 8. And in Hebrews chapter 8, about verse 5, this is what we're talking about today. I've got the NIV here in front of me, but it's talking about the tabernacle, or the temple that later became the sanctuary of God, where God dwelt. In verse 5 it says, they serve at a sanctuary that is a copy and a shadow of what is in heaven. And it goes on to talk about, this is why Moses warned them when he was about to build the tabernacle. He said, see to it that you make everything according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. So God wanted him to be specific to make sure that that pattern was traced and followed through. And as we look at this video clip in a little bit, as we look at the tabernacle, I want to see that everything was in minute detail. And we're going to look at the tabernacle and spend a session on it also, because a lot of these feasts, speaking of food, they have to go up to the tabernacle and sacrifice animals for specific reasons and for the appointment that God had set out for them. And so all of these appointments take place, for the most part, at the tabernacle. And so we want to look, kind of back up a step to look at the tabernacle before we go in to look at all the feasts and the sacrifices. Jump over again to another shadow. And this is chapter 10, verse 1 of Hebrews. It says, the law is only a shadow of the good things that are coming, not the realities themselves. And it goes on to talk about the difference in the superiority of Christ over the law. But the law was only a shadow of the good things to come. In Matthew, Christ said he did not come to destroy the law, but that the law through him might be fulfilled. But every jot and tittle, jot and tittle is like in our language a slash of the T or a dot of the I. And so Christ was going to fulfill everything in the law. And because the law was only a shadow, it was only a shadow of Christ, of who Christ really was. And one of the passages that we've kind of taken, you can turn there if you want, Colossians, or you can open up your book if you want, your book for this class, Colossians 2, 16 and 17. And at the very beginning of it, you got sort of a picture like this as the appointed feast. And this is the verse, sort of our theme verse that justifies us looking at these types to see Christ in the Old Testament feast given to Israel. It says, let no one judge you by whatever you eat or drink, or with regard to a religious festival, or a new moon celebration, or a Sabbath. For these were only a shadow of the things to come, for the substance was Christ. And so that gives us some justification, some biblical justification to look at these shadows, to understand who the substance of Christ was. I want to read real quick, just to give you a little further information on this shadow. This is the New International Dictionary of the Bible. And it talks about shadow. The word shadow in the Bible is used literally, as in the shadow of a mountain, the shadow of a tree. And it's used figuratively to talk about, for example, the shadow of death. You know, that's a figurative use of shadow. But it is also used theologically. And speaking of God, it illustrates these facts. The Old Testament prefigures in outline the New Testament substance. So the Old Testament is like an outline, and the New Testament is a substance of that, the detailed inscription of it. The Old Testament represents externally in rites and ceremonies, like I mentioned, what the New Testament fulfills internally. Now, the Old Testament saints, nevertheless, could by faith, they could comprehend the inner reality of the shadow. The New Testament, therefore, fulfills and abolishes the Old Testament shadow. The New Testament saints, however, can still draw spiritual instruction. Catch that. Us New Testament saints can still draw spiritual instruction from the shadow. And finally, even the New Testament saints, with the shadow and the substance, await the full day of spiritual understanding. Because we still await the substance, Christ, in His second coming. And so the last three feasts, as we see in the fall feast, which we'll study down the line, are still a shadow to us. We haven't quite seen the full substance, although we have an idea of it. And so that's sort of a good understanding of how the Bible uses the word shadow or foreshadow, the Old Testament, to understand who Jesus is. Now we're going to look at the tabernacle in great detail here. The tabernacle was given instructions to Moses in Exodus 25, 1 through 2, following, and 8 and 9 are some specifics that they were to bring all the wealth that they wanted, as according to their conscience that God had given them to bring, and then they were going to fabricate this tabernacle to be the specs, the specific detailed instructions that God had given Moses on the mountain. And so that took place after the Exodus, after they left Egypt. Some interesting things to look at here on this tape. They were led by night by a pillar of fire. They were led by day by a pillar of cloud, right? Remember that? Do you remember all the other detailed descriptions of the furniture of the temple? You had the altar, you had some basins, you had some candle lights, you had an incense altar, and then you had the Holy of Holies, and inside the Holy of Holies was what? The Ark, that's right. And inside the Ark were three different things. You remember what those were? Well, you're going to see them here on the video. It was the manna, Aaron's rod, and the Ten Commandments, right? So enjoy this model of the tabernacle in heaven. And remember, it's just a shadow of the substance of Jesus Christ. We're going to go into great detail to understand that shadow in the weeks to come. And so